I'm just going to go over how I'd rebalance TF2 weapons in their current state. My goal here is to keep the core identity where possible and to try to keep them simple, or at least feeling like something Valve would make. Say I don't want to go overboard with gimmicks and all that. Of course, some weapons I'm going to have to completely rework, but those are the exception, not the rule. I'm going to be starting off with scout weapons, the Babyface's blaster. The issue is pretty simple. It's too bursty, it feels inconsistent, so my fix would just be to triple the damage required to drain and fill the boost. I think that'd be a simple change to make it feel better. Next up, the shortstop. The damage output's lacking and the shove is a meme. Increase the reload speed by 10% to make the damage a bit better, and make sure you can shove while reloading to make it feel a bit better, and then also increase the force of the shove. Next up, the backscatter. It's just too situational to justify all its downsides. What I would do is just get rid of the clip penalty to make it feel more usable in general situations without having it be oppressive due to its range disadvantage. The Mad Milk, what I would do is give it the gas passer treatment, not make it dog shit, but make it not recharge from resupply cabinets and make it charge be longer, but also have it be based off damage too. I'd say 600's a good number. The Fan of War is kind of a weird case where you're better off just shooting the enemy, and to help fix, I'd say give it a faster switch to an holster speed. That would incentivize you to quickly take it out and smack them, but you're probably not going to use it anyways. Next up we got soldier weapons, the Liberty Launcher. The main issue with this is it doesn't really have an identity, and it's also just bad at killing things, so I'd say give it a unique upside of a 15% faster firing speed. We don't have a rocket launcher that does that, so it'd set it apart for sure. Next up, the airstrike. The issue is it's reliant on its blast jumping, and that's cool and all, but it really suffers, so I'd say get rid of the explosion penalty on non-blast jump shots, but keep it while blast jumping to make sure that's not too oppressive when you're raining down hell. The equalizer. It's inconsistent. Just give it the shot treatment. Plus 40, minus 40% damage, above, below, half. Simple. Effective. Easy. Simple. The concheror. It charges too fast. I think that's its main issue, and that's why people use it. Well, besides its great passive, so I'd say make it on par with the other banners. Make it 600 damage. The buff banner. I think it needs a passive to get more people to use it, so I propose a 15% faster reload speed. I feel like this would, well, first of all, play into its offensive role, but also be generally nice to play with. The righteous bison, poor bison, just increase its damage slightly by like 20%, and then it'll be not quite much of a meme. It'll still be a meme, but less of one. Now on the Pyro, for the flog, I would say to make it less annoying, get rid of the invulnerability while taunting, and to compensate, give it a 2-second longer crit duration. This is to actually have the Pyro use good positioning when using it, and not just doing it in a group of enemies. That's really annoying when that happens, so that'd stop it. The scorch shot, also very annoying. Solution, remove the stun, make it so it can't hit you twice. That's all. The gas passer. Make it charge faster, make it count as wet for the Neon Annihilator, and I'd say to make it more threatening, have it do 8 damage per afterburn tick instead of the regular 4. I feel like that would make people want to avoid it a bit more. For the thermal thruster, it's very clunky. Make it holster and deploy faster, and remove the knockback vulnerability, and we'll be good. The power jack. I don't know why it still has the health on kill. Let's get rid of the health on kill. It's already good enough. Speaking of health on kill, let's move it to the extinguisher. Add some health on extinguish kill, but give it a slower swing speed to make it more punishing if you miss. The extinguisher could, use a bit more reward, I think. The third degree is funny in that it's an actual direct upgrade, but it's still shit. So to make it stand out more, let's give it a 20% slower swing speed and a 25% damage penalty, but have the damage propagate through dispensers and have it propagate recursively. This means that if you hit a dispenser, it can hit a person as well as the medic healing that person. Very cool. It'd make it quite interesting and big brain, if you ask me. The hot hand. Get rid of the double slap. Give it a longer speed boost. The double slap, I don't know why they did it. It makes it really difficult to use, and the speed boost is too short to really use. The homewrecker, I'd say give it a 66% damage penalty against sappers. Pyro already counter-spy to such a degree that I don't know why they gave this weapon to Pyro of all classes. This would make it be 3 swings to destroy a sapper, which I think is much more fair to the spy, while still maintaining its more unique qualities. Speaking of unique, the sharpened volcano fragment. The problem is, you have a flamethrower, so why would you ever use this? So my solution is, every time you hit an enemy, the afterburn damage is increased by 2. This would have it stack and really make it threatening to be hit by it, because now you're taking so much more damage. Now for Demoman, the Scotsman skullcutter, give it no random crits, not because the reason you might think, because this makes it more consistent with Demoman's sword type weapons. Then I'd say give it a 20% increased shield bash bonus. This would give it a roll on Demo Knight that it kinda doesn't really have. Now for the caber, I'd say that they really ruined the thing. Replace the slower deploy with a slower holster speed, increase the explosion damage, and have it recharge with time and ammo, and I think we're good. I'd say swapping the deploy for a holster penalty would make it feel better to use in that it's like a last resort, kaboom kind of thing, Alright, now for heavy, the Natascha, it's really annoying to fight against. I don't know why they gave it the stats they did. So anyways, I'm gonna have to rework it. That's really the only way. I'd say give it a mark on death for 4 seconds, give it a 35% damage penalty, and a 20% accuracy bonus. This would make it a team support tool, in that you give your team mini crits against a target. The 35% damage penalty is to ensure that you're not getting mini crits all the time, and the accuracy penalty is to ensure that you don't use the lack of damage fall off to pepper people across the map. The brass beast, this is a movement based game, so slow movement bad. Let's make this better. Increase the damage resistance to 25% and have it always apply while spun up. The huo-long heater, it just isn't rewarding. Make the ring of fire like 50% bigger and increase the damage bonus to 40%. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's niche enough I think it can get away with it. The dalokohs bar, I like it, it's a nice idea, but you just have to eat it too much, and that's annoying. So I'd say make it eaten half the time of the sandvich. The buffalo steak sandvich, just remove the damage vulnerability. Being locked to your melee is bad enough. Why did they add the vulnerability? I don't know. Now for the eviction notice, it's a conflicting design. I don't really know what they want to do with it. So in the meantime, let's just reduce the damage penalty to 45%, so that way it's a bit more usable as a weapon. Now for engineer, the rescue ranger's problem is it heals too much for how little risk you put yourself at. Also, for some reason, the 4-to-1 health to metal ratio is listed as a downside for some reason, even though that's better than the stock wrenches. So let's fix that. Let's actually give it a downside. Reduce the health to metal ratio to 2-to-1. Next, for the pomson, get rid of the cloak and uber drain, remove the fire speed penalty, reduce the damage fall off, increase the projectile speed, and increase the clip size to stock, and you'd have a fine weapon. The ability drains are annoying, but it's okay since the weapon's bad, but none of those are really that good, so let's fix that. The wrangler, it's too overpowered for how simple it is. Reduce the shield blocking to 50%, and sentry guns can no longer be repaired with the shield. I think that'll put that to an end real fast. And let's also add on a 33% reduced self-damage from your sentry to promote sentry jumping, which I think is an unexplored tech due to how much it hurts you. Short circuit, it's too spammable, and it's really easy to counter projectiles, which sucks. So let's give it a 50% shorter alt fire lifespan, and no metal from dispensers while active. Simple, but it should work. Next up for the jag, it doesn't really have a noticeable downside since one of its downsides is negated by its upside, so let's bump up the repair penalty to 30%, so that way it has a downside. Next for the Southern Hospitality, it doesn't really have an identity, so let's give it one. Let's replace all of its stats with the following: a 35% slower swing speed, a 50% increased dispenser range, a 25% increased sentry range, and a 33% faster teleporter recharge. This gives it a niche as a wrench that boosts the power of your buildings at the cost of making them harder to sustain. I think that's a fair trade-off. Alright, now for medic, first thing I'll do is across all syringe guns, give them a passive reload to make them feel a bit better to use in combat. That's it. For the overdose, though, I would give it a 50% damage penalty, make the speed boost passive, and reduce the speed boost by 25%. This makes it a bit more enticing to run it full time, because the speed boost is a bit tedious to use in normal standard play. The Crusader's crossbow, it just does too much, so let's try to even the playing field a bit. Let's remove its passive reload, and its healing is now an alt fire ability, and that healing can heal enemy spies, so be wary of who you're shooting at. This would make it require a bit more brain usage to use rather than just spamming it down a choke point and being effective either way. For the quick fix, how I would change it is, the main issue is its uber charge, so let's make it a bit better while making sure it's not too good. So what I would do is, make sure you can block points while uber charged. It used to be able to do this, but Valve, you know how it is. Let's make it so that Afterburn no longer reduces healing if you're uber charged, and when you're uber charged, the overheal penalty no longer applies. I think that would make it more powerful in the sense that you can't be burst down as easily, but your counters are still there in the form of snipers, spies, and sticky traps. The vaccinator, it's just too oppressive. Let's make it so that it no longer builds overcharge while the bubble is active, reduce the bubble resistance to 66%, and the crit resistance to 50%. I think that'd make it still effective as a single damage type mitigator, but not overly oppressive against enemies. The uber-saw, I'm gonna nerf the uber-saw. It's just too good. So let's reduce the uber on hit to 20%. Next, let's increase the swing speed penalty to 50%. That is a huge swing speed penalty, but for what you're getting, I think it's worth it. Next up, the vita-saw. I'm gonna have to replace the stats entirely, so let's make it a bit interesting. On hit, let's make it increase your healing done by 50% and double your maximum overheal for 6 seconds, but give it a 25% damage penalty to compensate. This would give it a interesting role as a risk reward. You can poke an enemy and then heal up like you're heavy to really high health, and the heavy can like shred through them, and I think that'd be very interesting for a design concept, more so than, hey, you died. On to sniper, the first thing I'm going to do is blanket nerf the sniper rifles. The problem with them is that they're one-sided, and instantly dying just isn't fun. I've seen proposals for lasers and clips that are slow to reload, and those are great, but the issue is being instantly killed across the map. So let's try to mitigate that a bit. Headshots will no longer deal critical damage, but instead 200% damage, and fired shots will leave behind little trails like the classic does. As a result of this, headshots uncharged will do 100 damage, which is pretty good damage for anywhere on the map, let's be real. That's a demo pipe. But a knock-on effect of that is that you will benefit from crit boosts. For example, if you get crits krieged or a buff banner, you'll get that bonus as sniper now, which I think is interesting and it encourages team play. And I think that getting shot for 100 damage, well, that'll be when your maximum charge. 300 damage is the max a headshot we'll be able to do with this change, which is a lot of damage, but it's better than being one shot all the time, if you ask me. Now on to the actual rifles. We have the Sydney Sleeper. The main issue is its duration is too short, so let's do that. Let's increase the Jarate duration by 50%. Now if you're wondering how to deal with headshots with this, make them deal 1.25 times damage. The Huntsman, the main issue is its hit reg and how spammable it is. So let's reduce the max charge damage to 100, and hits are based on the hitbox, not the collision hole. This will make it feel more consistent, and also make it a bit more, feel a bit more fair to fight, since it's not just magnetically attached to your head and all that. Next up for the Jarate, it's too spammable for how powerful it is. Let's give it the gas passer treatment, no resupply cabinet, recharge in 60 seconds, but this one is going to charge with 4 kills or 8 assists, which will play into Sniper's pick class and support role. The Razorback. It is one of the most boring weapons in the game. It's very uninspired and it depends solely on spy existing, which is not guaranteed. So solution, let's generalize it a bit. So let's have it reduce melee damage by 40%, and backstabs will now deal 50% of your max health instead. I feel like this would make it feel a bit more dynamic in the game instead of just something you put on without thought, you know? The Darwin's Danger Shield is similar to the Razorback in it being boring, and instead of spy, it's pyro it depends on, so let's get rid of the afterburn immunity, as well as the fire damage resistance, and replace it with a 75% reduced debuff duration. So this is Mad Milk, Bleeds, etc. It's much more versatile in its effects, and I feel like that would be much more interesting than the current weapon, the Bushwhacker. Why would you design a class with a specific weakness only to make a weapon which nullifies that weakness? I don't know. But we have the Bushwhacker. So let's add a 20% slower swing speed and a 25% slower switch to speed. This will make it harder to get out, but still keep its identity as a Lamau crit weapon. The Tribal Shiv, it's pretty bad. So let's make it deal mini crits versus bleeding players. This will promote teamwork with like a scout with the Rap Assassin, and it'll make you want to go for follow-up hits to gain some bonus damage that you really aren't going to get otherwise with this thing. And now for Spy, something I would do to Spy as a base is, for his disguises, you can press or hold reload to feign a weapon reload. I think that Spy needs more funny tricking tools, and this would certainly be one of them. I think that'd be neat to see in game. For the Diamondback, the crits are too easy and they come out of nowhere. So let's increase the damage penalty to 25%, and you can no longer crit while disguised. Simple enough. For the Enforcer, the main problem I see here is its upsides are pretty niche and mostly reliant on players using specific unlocks. Solution: have it ignore sentry gun sapper resistance. I feel like that'd give it a nice niche as a building busting tool as well. For the eternal reward, let's remove the cloak train rate. All it does is make you run the l'étranger within. That's not very fun to deal with. For the kunai, the conniver's kunai, ooh. It punishes good players for bad teammates. It's just too rewarding for the spy. So let's remove the minimum health on stab, reduce the max overheal to 200, and increase the overheal decay. 200 is a number that's a existing damage threshold. The minimum health on stab removal is to encourage Spy to use his class's abilities, that is, seeing enemy health, to his advantage in this case. And then the increased overheal decay is to ensure that he doesn't, keep a bunch of health for the whole round. Next up, the spy-cicle. It's like the Razorback. Again, it relies on Pyro. Solution: remove the sound it plays when it's melted. I don't know why that's a thing. It's like an anti-pyro weapon that helps the pyro because he can hear it melt, but whatever. It'll now melt when being hit with Girardi Mad Milk gas or if you start bleeding. And so this adds a nice sort of thing where you get more mistake allowance at the cost of not being able to do your single target elimination anymore, and I think that is a fair trade-off, and it would make it much more versatile. The Dead Ringer, it doesn't really reward you for actually feigning a death, so let's make it do that. Let's make the speed boost and remaining cloak get removed upon decloaking, as well as increasing the damage resistance while cloaked to 35% to help you get into the mindset of, I gotta get out of here. Let's make the cloak meter train depend on Spy's health upon feigning. For example, right now it's just a static half of your cloak is gone, but say if Spy had full health, we might punish him more by consuming more cloak, or if he's more damaged, we can reward him for feigning death, so to say, by consuming less cloak so he has more time to reposition himself and get out of there. And I think that would make it much more bearable to fight. It'd make it a bit more predictable, as well as pretty much telling the Spy, hey, you gotta be clever with it. Onto the red tape recorder, just make it faster. It's really fucking slow. It's painfully slow. Just make it faster. 33% is a nice number, just make it that much faster. Now for the multi-class weapons, only one I see a real problem with is the base jumper. Its mobility is really bad, so I propose you increase the horizontal speed cap while it's deployed, which it feels really using it, because when you deploy you just slow down immediately. It's kind of like, man, so that's all I would change. Alright, and that wraps up all of the balance changes I would do if I could. Let me know if you think differently, if you think I'm dumb, or if you agree, or what you might do differently. I'd be interested in hearing that.